Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Kenny Wallace Show. Or is it Kenny Conversation with my dear friend, Rick Mast? Brought to you by JEGS. Where's JEGS at? Right there. The leader in high performance aftermarket car parts. Remember to go to jegs.com, and they are telling me that they have everything for Jeeps and trucks now. Well, Rick, you are the man of the hour. You want to take a guess why you are?
It doesn't have anything to do with politics, I bet, right?
No,
I
not
bet it.
this time.
I bet it has some. I will tell you real quick side story to the Indy. I met back in 15. I met Governor Pence, right, at a little function. Actually, he and Trump, and we met in Roanoke, Virginia. Anyhow, Pence walks in the room, introduces himself, and I say, "Hey, sir." And he says, "Oh, the inaugural Brickyard poll winner, right?" And I'm like, "Oh, so you've been briefed on who you're coming here to speak to, right?" He says, "Rick," he said, "I'm the governor of the state called Indiana, and there's a race there called the Brickyard. It's a pretty big deal to us in Indiana." I'm like, okay, you got me, dude.
Yeah.
So I thought that
Yeah.
was cool, man. What was that? 20 years or whatever later, the governor remembers my name or whoever it was.
I did my studying, as old
Oh boy.
As old Larry Mac Reynolds say. I got my notes.
Oh gosh.
So
Larry
Rick,
Mack will wear you out.
you're looking at the great Rick Mast, my dear friend, and Rick, in front of the world. I want to congratulate you on you had a great take on John Force's big wreck and injury, and it was a good 5-6 minute take. And that take, if you go over to the Kenny Wallace show right now with Rick Mast, Rick, you're almost at 500,000 views. Congratulations, because I believe that take was very heartfelt. You called out people that were saying that he shouldn't be racing at 75 years old. And boy, it struck a chord. So congratulations on a great take on John Force.
Yeah, it was a good deal, Kenny. I mean, it wasn't at the time. When I put it out there, it didn't have anything to do with number of hits or number of views. That was the last thing I thought. Well, I hope the bastards that rode that maybe do this or listen to this, right? That's the ones That's who I was directing it to. Nobody else. But it's been 75 years old and questioning that. Yeah, I get it, Kenny. I have no problem. Hell, I'm sure people question you at 60 or 80 or however old you are now. But but you know what? I didn't question that. But the deal was the people that said he got what he deserved. All right, man, you crossed the line now. We see all this stuff in politics and in the media and all, and you laugh at it and you let it go. But when it happens to us, and I'm talking about us being our racing brethren, I don't care if he's NHRA or IndyCar or NASCAR or dirt car or late model over here at the Saturday night racetrack. When you do that, then Rick Mast is going to jump in and intervene on stuff like that because it's just wrong. It's just wrong.
Yeah. Well, Larry McReynolds is a dear friend of yours and mine, and we poke fun at him because he's a little country. And he said to me one time, he says, Kenny, now that we are all out of racing in NASCAR, he says, when we raced, we finished first, second, third, fourth, and so forth. So you could say I was either won that day or I was 10th best. Well, when we do the Kenny Wallace show, it's like, was that a good show?
All right.
And you had a good show, because if you go over right there right now, you're close to 500,000 views. And because that's how we gauge our shows. Was it a good show or not? And buddy, you got the views. So that's what I meant. Good job.
Well, thank you.
You did a really good job. And you said what a lot of people are thinking. All right. Now, as they say in show business, we're doing a little business right now. So congratulations to Rick on his take on John Force. And Rick, there it is. Right here. There it is. And I want to thank you, because you are, look, I dropped my pen. Hold on.
Hold on, everybody.
But the Rick Mast show is a big hit, and it was all Charlie's idea. Again, Charlie's got great ideas, but part that is yours too, Rick. Thank you. We are over 100,000 subscribers. This is the first show. They call it the silver play button. And I want to thank you, Rick, in front of everybody. So there it is. And also, first and foremost, when we did a show, thank you, fans. There it is. Very rare. And Rick, thank you so much for being for doing the Rick Mast show on Kenny Wallace platform. You're awesome.
Well, Kenny, it's like I've told you, I'm honored to do it. Honestly, you know what I mean. I mean, your deal. We talk about branding. You know, like my son. You know, Ricky works for the Braves, right? And one of the things and he's doing real well there. He swings a big old stick. And one of the things that helped him in his position, he understands branding. He watched, right, as a little boy growing up, how you, as a driver, right, how you grow and you protect the brand, you know, and the brand means the sponsor you've got, it means NASCAR, and it means Kenny Wallace or Rick Mast, right? The best in our sport, I think, that I ever saw that protecting the brand to this day is Dale Jarrett. He protects his brand like nobody else, right?
Really? I didn't know that.
He protects himself. You just look back. The one that promoted the brand the best, of course, was Senior, Dale Earnhardt Senior.
Yeah.
But you know, with this show of yours, the Kenny Wallace show, and to get that plaque you got behind you, right? I mean, I came in on the very back end of this thing. You know, I may have added 3 people to that YouTube subscriber.
Stop it.
I don't know what it was, but it's very small. But you know, I mean, to some people, it's like, how'd that happen? And I'm like, well, you got to understand Kenny Wallace and watch Kenny Wallace on these videos for years. And it's, I don't know. It's just cool for me to be a part of this deal. I mean, there's so many podcasts out there, right? And everybody has their different takes and different ways of doing it. But, you know, the Kenny Wallace show, man, it kind of gets to the soul, all right? It gets to the soul of the subject that we're talking about, the way I look at it. I mean, so many of these things, you know, you talk about it and you fuss about the talking points and everybody hears the same thing on different shows. But this one, you know, I've always thought it was a little bit different because, you know, when I watched it before I became a part of it, Kenny was, and I'd always watched it. I'm like, well, yeah, that's that crazy ass Kenny. You know, that's the way he is, you know. And by the way, the one with your mom the other day, oh, so precious. Oh, so precious, man.
She's the best.
Made me miss my mom and my dad both, but good Lord.
Yeah.
Such a cool deal.
Thank you. I love my mama. And now people know why I'm the way I am. Yeah. I'm a spitting image. I'm a carbon copy of my mom. One more, as they say, piece of business. Watch me move my head a little bit. Okay, let me get it. This is the second new piece. We got the button right there. 100,000 from YouTube. Hold on. This is big for me. This is the great Dick Trickle.
Oh man!
And this is awesome. And this was given to me, Conrad Peterson. Just a real nice note from Conrad. Let me see. Make sure his phone number is on here. So let's fold it a little bit. But a really nice letter from Conrad. Just put it up there a little bit, saying how much he knows Dick means to me, and he watches the show. So this car they called Goldie, but that's Goldie, and that was towards the end of Dick's career, somewhat. And but anyway, all right, Rick. I think we're done with show and tell.
I got to tell you a Trickle story, man. I know you loved him. We loved him. I loved him.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know him like you, but when he came to the cup, me and him became buddies. And we were at Charlotte for the speed weeks of Charlotte one time, and Dick come to me in the middle of the week. He said, Rick, you got to come over to the house. I got to show you something. I said, well, Dick, I'm kind of big. No, hell no. You got to come to my house. I got to show you something. Well, I listened to this for 2 days, right? Yeah. I mean, he was so excited. He wouldn't tell me what it was. So excited. And I'm thinking, all right, I'll come over there Friday or whatever it was and come to your house. And I thought, man, he's got some kind of special race car, or somebody's giving him something, or, you know, some kind of deal. I go in there, we talk for a little bit. I said, what do you want me here for, Trick? That's what I called him, Trick. He said, I said, what do you want, Trick? What are you going to show me? He finally takes me over to his shed or his little garage. He opens it up, and there's a brand new John Deere leaf vacuum that you pull behind the mower. And I'm looking around at everything, and I'm like, okay, what are we looking at? I said, what? He said, look here. I said, what? He said, my leaf blower. I said, your leaf blower?
What?
He said, yeah. he went on for 30 minutes about how proud he was of this leaf blower. It's a leaf sucker. I'm sorry, leaf sucker that he hooked to his lawnmower, right? To suck up leaves. And I'm like, Trick, no wonder you're such a legend as a race car driver, because you're just as dumb as the rest of us, man. But that was my Trickle story that I love and always think about.
He was always very practical. It was the simplest of things. When you would look at Dick Trickle's race cars that he built by himself, it was like, yep, there's a front sway bar. Oh my gosh, hold on. Dick Trickle had a rear sway bar back with that old Ford, years ago. And then remember NASCAR. All of a sudden, everybody had a rear sway bar. I'm like, Dick Trickle had one in 1967, gang.
I'll be darned. I didn't know that. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, we need to start the show. First and foremost, the Brickyard 400 coming up is the 30th anniversary. So 30th anniversary of the Brickyard 400. And you're looking at the man that set quick time. He was on the pole. It's legendary because listen to this. Here's why it was such a big deal. 86 cars entered the race. It's not like, it's not like 60 cars entered the race for 43 spots. So here's the parameters, Rick. There were 86 race cars that day. It's hard for me to believe. Attempted to a 43 car starting field. 43 cars were in the race. So when you look at it and you kind of do the math, basically half the cars went home. And there you were, the best of the best. As Mark Martin would say, when that day was over, the man you're looking at right now, Rick Mast, was the best that day. Let's just start up like that, Rick. I got so much to talk to you about because there's a lot of hidden gems. But tell me about, you set quick time, you get out of the car. Let's go right there.
Kenny, somebody asked me, a reporter this week, I did a story or a couple stories like we always do each. And that's how we know how big Indy is. 30 years later, I still do a story or two or three or four right before Indy every freaking year, man.
That's awesome.
And I still get stuff in the mail. Honestly, the inaugural Brickyard Post stuff, I still get it in the mail to sign. And it always gets heavy just a couple weeks after Indy. Like I've already started last week getting the deluge of Indy Brickyard Post stuff to sign, right? And so 30 years later, it's still big. When I got out of the car, we could talk about everything leading up to practice, the whole deal. But when I got out of the car, we set the fast time. We were the 12th car, I think, to go out. And we knew Earnhardt was in the top 4 or 5 or 6 of us in practice. There were a handful of us that were consistently good in the different practices, right? Earnhardt was one of those dudes. Well, he went out directly ahead of me and set pace, set fast time. And then when I went, I beat him. So, right? So somebody asked me, well, Rick, were you pretty confident that you had the pole? And I said, well, I came in, I got out of the car. We were real tickled with the lap. I told Kevin, my crew chief, you remember Kevin Hamlin?
Yeah.
I said, Kevin, honestly, I can't tell you. The only thing that I could do to make a faster lap, and I looked at Ron Vaccaro, he's my engine builder, is this goofball here if he could give me more horsepower. If he'd have given me more horsepower, it's the only way I know I could have gone faster. I left nothing at any turn. And you know how odd that is, Kenny. When you qualify, you balls to the walls on that edge, and you give it everything you got. But when the lap's over, you're like, okay, I could have got in 3 just a little bit quicker. I didn't work the apex up there in 1 and 2 just right. Whatever. You always have those things that somewhere messed up or the car let you down, right?
Yeah.
You always know that as a driver. Honest to God, so when I came off the track, I'm like, well, that's it. I mean, the car was dead ass neutral. I didn't mess up getting in. I didn't mess up getting on the gas. It never wiggled. I said, if somebody beats it, they got to beat me on horsepower because they're not going through these corners faster than I just did. It's not possible, right? So anyhow, I get out of the car, and I'm like, we've gone out 12, so you still got 80 cars to go or 70 cars to go. And I remember the biggest part of the time, there's a bench. If you remember the garage area where we parked our cars, there's benches in there. I spent the most of the time, probably 4 or 5 weeks, laying down on that bench that evening. Waiting on the rest of the cars to be done.
We remember the weirdest stuff, don't we?
We do.
Yeah, because in the end, we're all pretty much the same. We think
Yeah,
differently, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So that,
But it was a long period. Believe me, man, to go
yeah.
through all those cars.
Okay, so we are talking about the very first Brickyard 400, 30 years ago, 1994. 86 cars attempted. All right, now let's start talking about the event itself, Rick. Some surprise starters. Uh, a little tidbit of information. AJ Foyt was the last car to make the race. That's pretty cool. Um, here's another one. Danny Sullivan
Right,
made the race.
right.
Danny was a Indianapolis 500 winner. Jeff Brabham, I don't know much about Jeff Brabham, but Jeff, from what I remember, was kind of a road racer. And those three drivers started the Brickyard 400 30 years ago. Tell me anything in your mind that you remember about AJ, Danny Sullivan, or Jeff Brabham.
Yeah, that those three names, that's part of a little group of names that had everybody so nervous, Kenny.
Oh,
And I tell
yeah.
you why. We had 80 some cars and everybody knew that many was entered. We had what, 2 provisionals and a champion in those days, I think, maybe 3
Yeah.
provisionals. You had Junior Johnson, you had Rick Hendrick, you had Richard Childress, Bud Moore, the Wood Brothers of the world. You had these guys as nervous as anybody at that racetrack because they understood, as we all did, that there's a good chance that we could go home from this race. The
Yeah.
reason being just simply numbers, 80 cars, 87 cars. That's just numbers. Somebody's going to fluke in there and knock you out. On top of that, you have these IndyCar guys, right? That have so much experience at Indy that you don't know what they're going to pull out. I mean, the track, none of us knew what to expect. We knew the track was very, very finicky. It's the most finicky track I believe I've ever driven on as far as changes, the weather, and how it affects it. And you just go up there with so many unknowns. Those three guys that made it that you pointed out, winning race car drivers, okay, wins that they. I think AJ Foyt won at Indy, maybe I believe.
Four times.
Yeah,
Four-time
4 times.
Indianapolis 500 winner, AJ Foyt.
Exactly. So the pressure that these team owners were under, I've never seen it, but I never saw it before, and I never saw it after. You would see guys like me and you. We're looking at the timing board when we qualify. We're going to make top 20. Do we have a chance of going home? Do we miss? You know how gut wrenching that is for us.
Yeah, and let's call an audible right there. Let me remind everybody. In our day, we had the top 20 were locked in the first day. And then you had to decide the next day. They came back and they qualified 21, through whatever it was. And then you had provisionals. So if you were not in the top 20 on the first day, you were nervous.
Big time, because typically most racetracks slows down the second day. So if you run a 50 flat and that puts you 22nd, right?
Yeah.
Well, then you've got 40 more cars are going to qualify the second day. All right, you can stand on your 50 flat time, okay, and let everybody else qualify. And I've seen this happen, and you have too. A fluke happened, the track changes, the weather better. That 50 flat on the second round when 40 other cars qualify, you could go home. People could run 49 70s. So always a gut wrenching thing. Always. And then you add that to the deal of this being Indy. And man, you got 67 more friggin' cars to qualify.
Insane. Okay,
what do I do? Do I requalify or not? It just absolutely incredible what went on.
Okay, let's do a little, let's make Charlie work today. I sent Charlie the starting lineup last night. So right now, Charlie, if you don't mind, can you, for everybody watching, insert the starting lineup? There it is, the 1994 Brickyard 400 qualifying starting grid. And Rick, I got it right here. And let's just look at it a little bit. Rick Mast, quick time. Okay, let's talk about your time for a minute. 172.414. Now, here's what's pretty wild about this. You kicked everyone's butt because Earnhardt was second at 171.726. Now that's not a big margin, but yet you were the only driver at 172 miles per hour. Then you had Earnhardt at 171. And there he is, Jeff Gordon, the eventual winner of the race. I do want to emphasize that Jeff Gordon was the winner with that great battle. I believe it went down with Ernie Irvan. Ernie had a flat tire. They were side by side for the win. We do want to acknowledge that. But take me back. Was the speed ever talked about? You and I, we grew up we run a 50 flat. But at Indy, they always talked about the speed, 172 miles per hour. Was that ever talked about, the speed?
Not too much, Kenny, but you know what made it start turning into speed? That's the first racetrack. And you remember when we go up there to test, you go up there for all the practices. They got all these time segments. They got all the markers in the racetrack.
Yeah.
And when you go back a lap, you get out of your car, you go over to whatever the room. There was a room there in the garage area, and you go in there, and they're posted as everybody that's practicing and everybody's speeds and everybody's individual lap speeds broken down to, all right, entering turn one to the center of turn one. You got a speed there, the center of that turn to exiting that turn, all around the racetrack. You could look at all these speeds and compare your speeds on the racetrack to anybody that was out there, right? And they would do it in miles per hour. So that's kind of what got us into the mile per hour thing. And to me, it was the coolest friggin' thing. I'd run over every time. Every time I got out of the race car, I'd run over to see, all right, where can I be faster, or where they whipping my ass at? What can I do, right? But the miles per hour thing came from that little room that you'd walk in and look to see how you're comparing yourself to everybody else.
All right, here we are already 20 minutes in. That's insane. So we're going to do something a little different. We're going to move forward, and we're going to talk about where we are today and how we got to where we are. So let me lead this charge here, Rick, and I want you to respond. In 1994, we had 350,000 people. Now, I mean, I'm rubbing my forehead. I can't even believe I'm saying that. 350,000 people. How do you even park that amount of cars around the racetrack, right? So, yeah, and we can comment on that. So, well, now I'm calling another audible. What was it like for you? Here's the question. What was it like for you to come off of turn 4, watch the pace car pull in with a sea of people? What was it like to go down into turn 1? I know you told the story on Kenny Conversation, but just run me through that one last time before we move forward.
It just it's like that particular drop in the green was like the whole week for me. It's very simple, Kenny. Magical. I mean, that's the best way I know how to put it. Just magical.
Don't miss a shift.
Don't miss a shift. I've never seen so many friggin' people in my life. Bill France looked at me and Earnhardt in the driver's meet and says, "This is a big deal. You know, blah blah blah. Everything's going on." He looked at me and Dale Earnhardt. He said, "And when y'all go take that green, and you drop in turn 1. Do not screw up my event." You know what I mean? Looking straight at me and Earnhardt, right? And I'm like, okay, I won't screw you.
The owner of NASCAR.
The owner of NASCAR. That's how. And he never talked in drivers' meetings. Hell, you never seen him in a drivers' meeting talking to us. But there he was telling all of us, do not screw up this first lap and make us look like a bunch of monkeys. Okay? Yeah. We understood. You understood the importance of it. Taking the green. Honestly, Kitty, my whole thing leading up to that, because Earnhardt had already put in my mind, he said, I'm going to lead that first lap. And I'm like, well, come on, big boy. So I knew what that meant. I knew what that meant. I knew what he's going to try to do. So honestly, getting geared up and coming down in front straight away, that as soon as that magic, and it was right before they dropped the green flag, the magical part ended, that I turned back to Rick Mast, the race car driver. Okay. Yeah. And what have I got to do to get to turn 1, knowing where I need to be with Earnhardt on the outside of me? And what's he going to do and how am I going to react, right? And 100% of everything I thought about happened. 100%. It just worked out perfect, you know? Or for me, because Dale was going to lead that first lap. You remember how it was? Everybody wanted to be first up there to do anything. They want to be first to get on the racetrack. They want to be first to go to the bathroom. They want to be first to buy the hot dog. Whatever it was to be first at, everybody had a story there for a year leading up to that event. So again, when they dropped the green flag or right before, all the magic went away. It was just another race at that point, and it really was. Well, it wasn't, but it was my whole deal was lead the first lap. That was my whole deal, lead the first lap. I led the first lap, and I'm like, okay, I got that over with. Now we can look at lap 160. That was my thought process.
Yeah, really, really good stuff. And this is documented on Kenny Conversation. And we're talking about the 1994 30th anniversary of the Brickyard 400. Rick Mast sets quick time, outruns Dale Earnhardt Sr. through turns 1 through turns 2, and set sail. Okay, Rick, we're going to set sail. Let's boogie on down the road here. So the Brickyard 400 for so many years is a great event. And then all of a sudden, the Brickyard 400 just shockingly falls from grace. Maybe 8 years ago, the Brickyard 400 started, and it was the Brickyard 400, and there was not 40,000 people in the grandstands. It was completely empty. There was only some people on the front straightaway. It was really, this race quickly fell from grace. You got all the good out of it. What do you think happened to NASCAR during those times? And we will address, now we're going back, but let's just address that for a moment, because I have my notes. We're going to break it. We're going to break it down. The return of the Brickyard. What do you think happened in NASCAR where there was literally almost nobody at the racetrack for the Brickyard 400 about 8 years ago?
Kenny, I've got a little different take, and this goes to a broader subject of NASCAR in general. I have a little broader take. We were at, and maybe I'm getting into your questions you're going to ask, but we were at California in 2000 or 2001, and I'm sitting there in the driver's meeting, and I'm on the end row, right, and it's tight. And in those days, every politician, every entertainer around, they went to these driver's meetings. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sitting on the end row. So there's a woman standing beside me, rubbing against my shoulder. I look up, it's Sheryl Crow, all right, the singer.
Yeah.
Right beside her, against her and against my thigh was the girl that spins letters on Wheel of Fortune, Vanna White.
Vanna White.
All right, listen to this. Right beside her at my foot was the governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? And I look down through there, and I'm like, every politician in California is there. Every entertainer you can think of is in this room. And when I got home the next day, I told Sharon, I said, Sharon, we're in a fad right now. She said, what? I said, we're in a fad. She said, what do you mean? I said, there's no way that this sport is as popular as it's being shown right now. She said, what do you mean? I said, right now, because of everything that happened, and the Brickyard was part of it, the explosion growth that went on through the 90s, it led to a deal to where at the end of 2000 and early 2000s in the TV package, right? It all perfect storm. It exploded. NASCAR was a place to be. NASCAR was a place to be seen at. NASCAR was a thing to do, right? And I remember telling my wife, Sharon, this thing is a fad, right? It's just a fad, right? We have our hardcores and we go to gain some fans. I said, but when the fad wears off, right, we're going to find out really how popular our sport is. Now the fad did wear off, but what happened, NASCAR, they unpurposely, with not intended to, turned their back on the core fans. Mm-hmm. Or at least that's what the core fan felt and still feels today somewhat, because they took away the Darlington deal. They took away Wilkesboro. They took away Rockingham, right? They want to move. And we all understand why this all happened. We know what it's all about, right? Yeah. And they did not want to lose that core fan, but they lost some of them, right? So I think the deal at Indy is just a microcosm. Was that right? Let's see, micro.
No, that's right. Yeah, that one race fell from grace.
Yeah,
and that one race is a microcosm. It means we're focused in on that one race.
Yeah.
And actually, what you're saying is what happened to the Brickyard is what happened to the complete sport of NASCAR.
Yeah. Exactly. I don't think it had anything to do with the Brickyard. Nothing at all. It's just what happened to our sport. Because you got to understand, kid, in my view, You had R.J. Reynolds coming in. You had the 79 Daytona 500 with the fight, right?
Yeah.
And you had the Brickyard. I think these are the three, in my view, the three explosion points of our sport. And what happened with Indy? Here's what happened with Indy. The very first inaugural 400, we had all these things that had built up. We had, for whatever reasons, man, we had the popularity of our sport was just sitting there brewing. It was like a powder keg almost.
And
at
it,
that
and it
point.
was a good race. The 94 race, Ernie Irvan goes up there and challenges.
Yeah.
Fans are on their feet, and then Ernie has a flat tire. So it was a good race.
It was a good race. It was a very good race. It certainly was. And I think it was just perfect timing, man. Our sport was ready for a Brickyard 400. And when the Brickyard 400 happened, it's like you lit a fuse to this powder keg that we've been setting on as NASCAR for, 5 or 6, 7 years leading up to this. And when you lit that powder keg, the sport just exploded. I think, in my mind, that was Indy's place in our sport. It ignited what we'd been setting undercurrent or under the table a little bit. It just blew it open, and we lived that moment from there. The rest all through the 90s and through the 2000s. All right, till everything started going the other way. That's what we lived, and to me, that was the importance of the Brickyard.
Yeah. So let's keep moving forward. So they run the Brickyard 400 year after year, and it's doing pretty good. And then Goodyear comes in, makes a mistake. They kiss a snake.
Right.
We had the debacle where they could only run 10 laps at a time. People were blowing tires out horribly, crashing into the wall. And then the new fad was to not like NASCAR. So NASCAR said, okay, and this one blew my mind. They said, we are not going to race on the legendary Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Now, my investigation here leads me to believe that I'm accurate, I believe. Respond right here. Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Mile is the oldest in America. That's key, in America. And the Brickyard is second. Now, there's a track, a British track, I believe that's oldest, but let's just stay in America. So the Brickyard 400, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, is the second oldest track in America. It's got this incredible mystique. Michael Andretti told me when I was talking to him, even though he lives there, he says you pull in the place and it feels magical. So Rick, we get away. We decide not to run on the racetrack, and we run the Brickyard, quote unquote, 400 on this makeshift road course. How in the hell? I mean, when I look back on it, I'm like, what? Now, mind you, this race coming up is the first race where we get back to the real Brickyard 400. We're back on, not the oval, but, shoebox shaped racetrack. This is the oddest shaped racetrack. It's not an oval. So take me through that time. Give me your thoughts. How did we get on a makeshift road course inside? How did we leave the Indianapolis racetrack?
Well, two things on this, Kenny, and one is really, really sad. All right. So the one reason you do it is, all right, we've lost interest. We're not getting fans to the race. All right, let's try something different. Let's make it a road course. We'll do that and see if we generate fan interest, right? Well, of course it didn't. It didn't work. But to me, and the more telling point of this whole thing is, all right, we're going to make it a road course because you're telling me that the oval course and what we've done forever is not relevant.
We need to tear the racetrack down.
Yeah, I mean, what we've done and always done. It doesn't mean anything. It's not important. We're going to do the road course to try to make it more exciting or try to get more fans. Well, yeah, well and fine, but go down to the IRP and do it over there, right? Don't do it at the hallowed grounds. I mean, Kenny, the first time I went through those gates, and I bet you felt the same thing. I'm like, you almost got chill bumps. I did the first time I went in there, man, because all the hype leading up to it and what we were told. And, remember the IndyCar guys didn't want us there, some of them. I remember a lot of those quotes. Although we loved them, they loved us. And I totally understood it. And we But we went up there as a group. We were told many times what to do and not to do. The procedures were different, and you understood going in there is a different deal. But dude, when you come through that tunnel and you go into that area and you see that racetrack, you're like, damn, right? Then you go under the gasoline alley thing, right? Damn. Then when you first get out on that racetrack and you make your first few laps, you're like,
Wow.
damn. I mean, honestly, as a race car driver, you're just like, damn, or
The
wow,
whole time,
right?
right?
Yeah. So you're telling me that a few years later that's not relevant, right?
Yeah, right.
Going through that gasoline alley thing, going into turn one, going down that front straightaway at 180 miles an hour, looking at a wall 90 degrees in front of you, and your foot says keep it wide open. Your brain says, no way in hell this is gonna work. I'm gonna die, right? All that stuff, all the history, everything that goes on there, the hallowed grounds. You're going to tell me that it's not important enough to keep the event going here. We got to put it on a road course. That was the part, Kenny, that always bothered me about doing that. And I get it.
Imagine us, Rick. Let's put it this way. We're good buddies. I can interrupt you. Imagine the Daytona.
This is your show. It does. What is it? That does say Kenny Wallace show.
We partner. As Schrader would say, we're partners, Rick.
Oh Lord. Oh gosh. Okay.
But imagine this. Let me put it in this perspective. We're at the Daytona 500, and they go, you know what? Let's quit running the Daytona. Let's run it on the road course. So I kind of, although it's different, I kind of feel like it's that scenario, and it's like I don't want to beat a dead horse, but how in the world did we let that happen? And you did a good job explaining it, Rick.
I don't know. We had, golly, Ken, we could go into depth on this. We could do a Ken Burns series and sell tapes, right? But about NASCAR. But really, Bill France Jr. and his vision and what he did, you look at some of the stuff that went on, some of his visions and the things that happened, and he was so prideful of running Indy. Okay, you could just see it in Billy's demeanor leading up to that. Anytime I talked to him about it, the whole time we were up there, and then we lose Billy. We lose some of Billy's. How can I say this? Some of his intellectual properties about how NASCAR is run, okay, and how you do things. And what happens? We start getting a lot of young marketing dudes. We get young marketing dudes in NASCAR, right? Kenny, when I came in 88 or 89 or 90, whenever it was, I mean, they were like, what was I forget the number, say 8 people in marketing or 6 people in marketing. Hell, and when I left in 2002, there's 128 people in marketing, dude, right? Yeah. And they're all 25 years out of 101 marketing school. And, I never forget Billy France put his arm around me one time at Daytona. He said, man, as long as I keep you SOBs side by side, and he pointed at the racetrack and the grandstands, he said, all the rest of this stuff takes care of itself. Very simple philosophy, right?
Yeah, I want to say this, and I don't want to put too much pressure on Charlie, but we had a conversation with Michael Andretti, and boy, you're right. About 15 minutes ago, those IndyCar guys did not like these stock cars coming in there for all types of reasons. Come to find out, that was during a pivotal time.
Yes,
when like IndyCar and CART, they split up. There was a lot of controversy during that time that got us to there, and they did not want us there. What did you think when NASCAR brought their Roman chariots to race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway?
Yeah, a little disappointed because I think that was the beginning of the problems for IndyCar. Because I think at that point, this is my own opinion, I don't have facts to prove it, but I think France at the time, was with Tony George, and I think he tried to convince him that he should start his own series, because the CART was getting too big, and that it was going to overshadow the Speedway and things like that. And I think that's where the buzz got in Tony's ear, and You know, and then that, you know, obviously it just about killed IndyCar racing, you know, with the 2 series. So that from my standpoint, that was not a good time, you know, for IndyCar.
Listen, I agree with you. This is a deal where this could be the history of, you know, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the history of the Brickyard. But Rick, here we are. My hair is about gone. You got very little hair.
Yeah.
It's 30 years later, buddy. We're coming to the end here. 30 years. Tell me what has happened in your life in 30 years. This marks, and I want to say this. We're going to wrap this up about this is the 30th anniversary of the Brickyard 400. We're finally getting back to normal. This year's race at the Brickyard will be on the normal track. We're trying to get back to reality. So what has happened in the last 30 years? What's your highlights?
Man, watching my kids grow.
That's
right?
awesome.
Honestly, that's my whole deal. You know,
Yeah.
when I was taken out of the sport, they were trying to get me to do TV. All right. This is in 02.
Yeah.
Pam, if you remember Pam Miller with Fox.
Oh, yeah.
I had done a little work, some stuff. And when I announced I was retiring and getting out of the sport, they were talking to me about doing it. Right. And I'm like, man, I don't feel right yet. You know, this was in fall of that year, fall of
Carbon
02.
monoxide poisoning.
Yeah. I didn't feel right at the end of 02. And I said, no, I'm not going to sign anything to do anything next year. So I didn't. So the next spring, I guess it was March or April, they had an Xfinity race in Nashville. And I forget who was supposed to be working it. Whoever it was had an emergency, couldn't make it, right? So Pam called me. I said, yeah, I'll do the gig. Hopped on a plane. I'd sold my plane by then. Right,
Yeah,
sold my
right.
motorhome, sold all that crap. Anyhow, I had to go like the peasants. I had to go to the airport and actually get a ticket and fly.
We all do the same thing. Brother Rusty got rid of his helicopter, got rid of his jet, So I mean, he doesn't have any. Well, it's
really?
a smart thing to do. You don't,
Well, of
you don't have the big money rolling in anymore.
No,
we're all there. Go
okay.
ahead.
Anyhow, so I go. This is on a Thursday. I worked the deal Saturday night. And I had fun at it. I was decent at it, I think, right? They still wanted me to do stuff. And I get home Sunday night at midnight, right? The next day, my son Ricky, it was his 21st birthday, whatever it was. And I remember looking at Sharon one time. I said, when the hell did he turn 21? I mean, he was just learning how to ride the bicycle 6 months ago.
Racing.
Yeah. And I remember my little twin daughters, Sarah and Katie, they were 7 maybe at the time or 6, and they were running around the yard. And I remember, here's no joke, Kitty. I took my foot and I took the edge of it and I drew a line in the dirt or in the grass, and I said, I'm not crossing over that line. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to watch. I missed Ricky growing up. I'm going to watch my little girls grow up, and that's the reason that I didn't do that, because I knew if I stepped back into that arena, you know, it's like cocaine addiction, I suppose. I mean, You're there. I mean, you're in the middle of it, right? And it would be as much time gone as I had spent gone racing, I think, right? In those days, the way it worked, and then not having your travel deal, you know, your jets and your motorhomes and all that, it would even be worse time wise. And so I did not do it, and that's the reason I didn't do it. Okay, and I came back home and we, you know, had some commercial property here and started a couple little businesses and, you know, do our thing to kind of keep it going. So, you know, but I will say, Kenny, a neat deal. At Indy, we're doing this alumni group, the NASCAR alumni group, which is one of the greatest things NASCAR, in my opinion, have done for competitors. They're doing a big deal at Indy, right? We're going up. They've been trying to get a hold of all the drivers. In fact, I've tried to help them find some of these goofballs. They're trying to get as many drivers as they can in the inaugural race to be up there. They're going to put us together and do a picture or whatever they're going to do, right? Which is pretty cool. So I'm pretty thrilled about the alumni group right now.
And let's end it like this, Rick. I got the starting lineup right here. When I look at this, Rick Mast, Dale Earnhardt. Okay, we're going to end like this. I'm going to say these names, and at the end, you're going to go, I don't know where to find that person. And listen, some have passed, some are dead.
Right.
Okay, but let's go through it. And as a tribute, this is our tribute to the 1994 Brickyard 400. So I'm going to say the names. You can jot them down. and you can say, I don't know how to get a hold of that person,
Right.
or that person has died.
Right.
Okay. Rick Mast on pole, Dale Earnhardt front row outside, Jeff Gordon, Jeff Bodine, Bobby Labonte, Bill Elliott, Brett Bodine, Ricky Rudd, Sterling Marlin, Mark Martin, your top 10. Morgan Shepherd, 11th, Rusty Wallace, Greg Sachs, Dale Jarrett, Michael Waltrip, Dave Marcus, Ernie Irvin, Jeff Brabham, Rich Bickle, and then 20th, Hut Strickland. 21st, Terry Labonte, Wally Dallenbach Jr., Ken Schrader, Jimmy Hensley,
Yep.
Todd Bodine, Danny Sullivan, Darrell Waltrip, John Andretti, Jeff Purvis, Joe Nemechek, 30th. 31st, Jeremy Mayfield, Bobby Hamilton, Ward Burton, Jimmy Spencer, Bobby Hillen, Kyle Petty, Teddy Musgrave, Jeff Burton, Derek Cope, AJ Foyt started 40th. And then I'm assuming your provisionals, 41st, Lake Speed. Handsome Harry Gant started 42nd. And the very last starter was a guy named Mike Chase, and I remember him from the West Coast. So
Right.
when I say the 43 starting names as a tribute, give me your thought.
I've got a list here of names that Indy sent me for,
Yep.
for me to try to find the guys. I'll be reading them off real quick, dude.
Okay.
Bobby Hill and Dave Marcus, Derek Cope, Greg Sachs, Jeff Purvis, Jeremy Mayfield, Jimmy Hensley, Jimmy Spencer, Lake Speed, Mike Chase, Rich Bickle, Ted Musgrave, Wally Dallenbach Jr. All right. That's the guys they sent me that they couldn't get a hold of. So evidently everybody else is on that list they got a hold of. I was able to help with. I got him Hillen's number. I got him Marcus' number. I got him Cope's number. Didn't get Greg's, Purvis, Mayfield. I got Jimmy Hensley. I got Jimmy Spencer. I got Lake Speed. I got Musgrave, and I got Dallenbach. I could not chase down Mike Chase. But somebody told me he was working at Penske now. I don't know if it's the same Mike Chase, but I got all those dudes, man. So
Good stuff. Good stuff, everybody.
Now, and I told him, I said, I just said along, I said, now here's Harry Gant's number. And I told,
I'm
I said,
tired. You call him.
I said, listen. I said, here's his number. And I said, if you could get him to come to Indy, you will pull off the biggest, I forget the word of the vernacular I use, but the biggest deal that ever happened in NASCAR, because Harry doesn't go anywhere. You know, and they sent me a note back. We've already tried, Rick. He ain't coming.
All right, everybody, listen. That was the best time ever. Thank you, Charlie Marlowe. What a wonderful idea. And once again, we realize that we can go on and on and on. But what we did is we started with the 1994 Brickyard 400. We let Rick Mast tell us about coming down to the green flag. Then we talked about how did the Brickyard 400 leave and go to the road course. And we're tying the bow right now. We are going back to the real racetrack. And your final say, Rick. Your final say. Go ahead.
Thank goodness for that. You know what I mean? The core of what drove our sport is the core, right? You can't change that. Competition. When I bolted down in my seat and you're bolted in your seat and they drop the green flag, I'm thinking, what have I got to do to kick Kenny Wallace's ass today? What have I got to do that, right? That's our core. And there's so many cores about our sport that drove our sport to be successful and popular. Indy 400, Brickyard 400 on the big oval. That was one of the cores. It needs to always be the same.
Yep. Unbelievable. I'm speechless. I want to keep going. I want to talk about me and you beating and banging in the Xfinity days. But listen, we are in podcast form. And once again, Charlie says, hey, podcast is getting big for the Kenny Wallace Show. I want to thank you all for that. Remember, we are on iTunes and Spotify. That's where you go to listen to Rick Mast. And this is a long one, so you'll listen to Rick on the way to work. You turn around, fire it back up, listen to him. And remember to always respond. Tell us what you think of the Brickyard 400. Subscribe right here. Until next time, the Kenny Wallace Show, Kenny Conversation, Coffee with Kenny, Rick Mast Show. We just keep on rolling. Goodbye, everyone.